Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? I'm a little bit late getting to the microphone today. Just parking the pickup truck after my cross-country tour talking to America's forgotten Russian intelligence agents. Just want to get a feel for the ground Pravda, I guess. Picking up on where we left off yesterday, nothing's the same. The end. I don't know what else to tell you. At this point, let's see. Has anybody else resigned? I don't know. I'm not even up to speed on who's in and who's out of the Trump administration at this point. I think Kellyanne Conway survived the evening, which I guess was was open to some question. But I don't know. Well, the world's aflame today, I guess, with discussions of what has helpfully been branded the Russian connection by Donald Trump himself. He is, in fact, a master of branding, as was pointed out on one of the clever retweets that I picked up on this morning. Josh Booth, as it happens. Who's Josh Booth? Well, he's a resist dude from Akron, Ohio, who happens to have hit a home run with this particular tweet. For once, not a famous dude. At least not famous yet, maybe famous now for this. I thought this really hit the nail on the head, though. Area brand specialist inadvertently brands his own scandal, the Russian connection, retweeting Donald Trump, who did just that, tweeting this morning, I guess this Russian connection nonsense is merely an attempt to cover up the many mistakes made in Hillary Clinton's losing campaign. By the way, he hyphenated cover up, which in this particular usage I don't think is correct, but hey, what's the difference? Is that really what we're concerned about? No, of course not. What are we concerned about? I don't know. Thankfully, it's Wednesday, and Greg Dworkin can tell us what we're concerned about. And in case there's anything that we missed being concerned about, well, Joan McCarter will follow up and tell us, well, how about this? What all the people on the front page of Daily Kos are concerned about. And I think that'll largely be the same thing because, you know, they read newspapers. And we all get worked up about the same stuff. I really, at this point, it became useless by yesterday evening to even try and follow what was going on. We'll give you the best look at it that we can. Bill's been paying some attention at least, right? Let's see, Bill. Bill says, all the way from Portland, Maine, Daily Kos Radio is live now, which is actually not coming from Portland, Maine. His tweet is, I'm not. Kagro X, that's me, not him, is now seeking investors for a project he's calling Trump Tower Leavenworth. Would you like in? Get in on the ground floor. I numbered the ground floor 57, though. That way we could advertise that we're the tallest building in Leavenworth. Probably would be true if I had a second story. I don't know what kind of city is attached to Leavenworth. But I'm also informed, by the way, that the traders are no longer often imprisoned at Leavenworth. It's just the most recognizable federal prison city name that I could come up with. It's probably very boring where they put the traders these days. Anyway, let's see. So, where do we start today? I don't even know. It's open to any approach, I guess, at this point. The big news of the evening, of course, being a report in the New York Times now being, I don't know if it's being corroborated necessarily, but certainly repeated in all the major newspapers. Things go way beyond Flynn. I feel like we already knew that to be the case. Of course, we were reminded yesterday that Flynn was just the third of the Trump campaign's operatives to be singled out and then finally ousted from operations due to untoward contact and continuing contact with Russian intelligence agents. And I guess we're up to 4 now, at least last I saw in the reporting. I mean, where to begin with this stuff? I don't know. Certainly the the New York Times piece was the one that got the most initial attention. And what I'll do here is I'll call up Daily Kos coverage of that. You would have seen it on the front page. Pardon me. Last night, Mark Sumner picked it up. We also had a number of diarists that obviously, as soon as this report broke, ran to the computers to check out whether they were seeing fake news and to talk about it with their friends over at Daily Kos. Trump advisors were in contact with Russia throughout the campaign. It's almost as if they had installed a dedicated server inside Trump Tower at some point that did nothing but communicate with Russia. I wonder if there's any truth to that. Geez, they should look into it. Anyway, let's see. It shouldn't be shocking news at this point, Mark says. After all, Russian officials were bragging about it just 2 days after the election. Yeah, I was wondering when we might get to that. The quote, of course, from the piece here. Actually, we're looking at one of Mark's previous pieces here that he's quoting from. Surprise! Trump was a Putin puppet all along. And, well, let's see. Let's jump back here and just read the initial quote. Russia said it was in contact with President-elect Donald Trump's team during the U.S. election campaign, despite repeated denials, by the Republican candidate's advisors that any links existed. So as it turns out, some links existed. I didn't even know about that. Greg,
hey.
Tell us, what was there, like 1, 2 links between maybe some fringe Russian figure and, I don't know, an operative in Iowa?
There's several different people that are identified.
What?
Specifically. Manafort, Carter Page.
That guy is Russian.
And the thing is, some of these figures are still being sought by the press today for comment before their name gets out there a little bit more. And one of the intriguing things is going to be, well, how much of this involves other people? The report says that there's, besides campaign folks, there's other people as well. Who are these other people? Are we talking about Jeff Sessions? What if his name comes up?
I don't know. It doesn't matter. He'll clear himself. Apparently, he's refusing to recuse himself from any investigation. Resisting. Well, that's
see. The thing is, because pressure on all of this is just going to grow exponentially. This is just such a huge story. So let's try to step back and look at the big picture here.
By the
I'm
way,
going to start with a little tweety storm here. It's maybe a tweet shower because it's not very long.
He's just
from Eric Garland, Game Theory guy.
Okay, oh no.
Yeah,
right.
But he doesn't talk about game theory.
You know what? I need Chris Arnett to go interview that guy.
Exactly. Eric Garland is an intelligence private dude who does intelligence briefings for companies.
Yeah.
That's where he comes from.
Well, that's a game theory for you.
Just to give you his background. So he says, many people don't know who gets briefed on what in D.C.
Right. Me neither.
I'm having a ball watching all these Republicans acting like they weren't briefed. Well, I think it's too soon to conclude that Russia has a military, says guy who was briefed 6 times about Russian intel ops in 2016. I don't think we should rush to judgment about thing that was reported this morning, says guy who attended top-secret briefing last month. But nobody is pathetic a liar as the president, now tweeting that the New York Times is lying about the thing he was warned would come out eventually a month ago by, of course, Yates, the acting attorney general who was then let go. It's the problem with lying or running conspiracies with a 98 IQ mouth breather. You forget how to manage it all. And that's pretty much what's happening here. It's gone way beyond their ability, their puny inability to control this. I mean, Kellyanne Conway isn't even invited on Morning Joe anymore and other shows. They won't have her because she's a lying weasel.
Yeah.
And they don't have anybody. And that's true. And Mika Brzezinski said this morning, not having her on, can't trust her, doesn't say anything useful.
Yeah, I know what we're doing.
And, so all that's true. So, again, bigger context. This is from NBC News this morning. First read, putting the pieces together of the Russia story. And that in and of itself, of course, is a big deal. So he says, Chuck Todd, Mark Murray, Carrie Dan, who put this together. Another day, another story. This time, according to the New York Times and CNN, so it is some corroboration there. It's that members of the Trump campaign had repeated contacts with senior Russian intelligence figures. Phone records and intercepted calls show that members of the Donald J. Trump 2016 presidential campaign. Now, this makes it campaign stuff. Okay. That's explosive. Yes. And other Trump associates had repeated contacts with senior Russian intelligence officials in the year before the election, according to 4 current and former American officials. High-level advisors close to then-presidential nominee Donald Trump were in constant communication during the campaign. That's the word, constant communication. So add that to the other Russia-Trump storylines. Trump's constant praise of Russia's Vladimir Putin. Russia's interference in the 2016 presidential election to benefit Trump. Trump's embrace of the interference. Boy, I love reading those WikiLeaks, he said. And National Security Advisor Michael Flynn's resignation after misleading Vice President Mike Pence and other Trump officials, which is the official line, and we don't believe because they're trying to say Pence had nothing to do with it, and we just don't know that. They say, and therefore they're reporting correctly that they say, but we don't really know that. Anyway, about his communication with Russia's ambassador. Isolated, these seems to be unprecedented stories for a presidential campaign or incoming new administration, but taken together, they have the potential, and we have to stress that word right now, potential, to be something even bigger. Meanwhile, President Trump has reacted via Twitter to the newest Russia-related stories. He says, this Russia connection nonsense is merely an attempt to cover up the many mistakes made in Hillary Clinton's losing campaign. Information is being illegally given to the failing New York Times and Washington Post by the intelligence community, just like Russia. So if he says that it's illegally being given, he's verifying that it's true. And if he's trying to say, okay, look over there, squirrel, Hillary Clinton, nobody's buying that. Nobody is buying that.
Maybe it's illegal to give fake information.
Right.
Who knows?
So that's the bigger story. And at the same time, there's a Politico Morning Consult poll out today with pretty bleak poll numbers for him.
Oh.
Worst president since World War II. Trump is 26%. Obama's 25%. Those are the believers, you know, the 22% of the public who believes Donald Trump about everything.
I see.
Richard Nixon was 13.
Oh.
George W. Bush 7. Bill Clinton 6. Richard Nixon was 13 and Donald Trump was 26. Think about that.
That's bad.
Worst president since World War II. That's actually pretty amazing.
I mean, what was there a major negatives during World War II, or is that just when we started thinking about it?
We're kind of busy. But polling, didn't really get into play until well after that in terms of reliability. So that's one of the reasons why it's used as a benchmark.
Worst president since Mexican War.
Yeah.
How about that?
So Rick Wilson points out this morning, helpfully, your risks to America should read in this order. 1, Russia. 2, Trump. 3, the intelligence community. 4, the media. If you are reading this in any other order, see a doctor. Russia first. Russia, Russia, Russia. So there's a huge amount of discussion on that side of the aisle about this. And, highly important. This is from Axios, which is one of the new media startups. Says, White House staff in survival mode, scared to death. A top source described borderline chaos in the White House. Ooh, chaos, that word. I love when they use that word. I don't know where they heard it from. Some staff is in survival mode, scared to death. Internal leaks distract the White House. What we're seeing now is something much more consequential, leaks from throughout the government, plus a host of Obama alumni emptying their clips. And that's one of the things that the Washington Post had. They said that basically, among the other things that happened during the transition, is that the Obama people were literally afraid to tell the Trump people too much because they had no idea where the information was going to wind up.
Yeah, that is troubling, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. They had to know, on Sally Yates. They had to know she was radioactive. There'd be consequences when she said that, Flint was compromised. It was either reckless or total incompetence. It leads back to the fact that nobody's in charge. What we're seeing now is something much more consequential. Leaks from throughout the government plus a host of Obama alumni emptying their clips. The news eruptions are gaining a Watergate aura. Constant, complicated revelations from intelligence agencies and federal law enforcement, White House denials, frenzied competition among the great news organizations. Chuck Todd said, yesterday afternoon. Welcome to day one of what is arguably the biggest presidential scandal involving a foreign government since Iran-Contra. Hunker down. This is a Class 5 political hurricane that's hitting Washington. Now, that's even before the New York Times story. So what happens is that this is going to consume all of the resources, all of their time. And don't forget, they don't have all their positions filled. The ones that are filled with third-raters, because the first and second-raters don't want to work with these folks. And they don't have the resources to deal with this. The best they have is Kellyanne Conway, who's now banned from a lot of shows. They have to deal with the fallout here. They're going to be too busy trying to protect their own butts to spend all the time they wanted to screw the country. This is a good thing. It doesn't mean that, he's being impeached tomorrow, although this could lead to something like that. It's
good.
That big.
I'm waiting.
Well, it'll take, again, a reminder, it took 2 years for the Nixon thing to spin out from the day of the Watergate break-in in 72 until his recusal from government in 74. It was a 2-year process. So this has been a month. 1 month.
Yes.
And already the whole thing has fallen apart. It's astounding, but not unpredictable.
No, we certainly read enough about it during the campaign, but for some reason it was, I guess in the campaign context it's easily dismissed by one of the sides, and I guess
right, exactly. And then some of the other people, and what a great point you brought up, because then we say it and they you guys are partisans, you don't know what's going on. So let me read to you a little bit just from tweets, which I sent you so you can have screen caps of them. And Scott Anderson has links. I included those too. But just a flavor here. John Weaver, who's a campaign manager type. Okay. We are headed for a Nixon-like crisis, and GOP leaders, to preserve the party, better start putting country first. Let's see who else we have here. We have Michael Tomasky. GOP House mice put Trump before country. The tough guys who are rolling up their sleeves to get President Clinton even before the election are awfully quiet now. We have Nate Silver. Worth asking why Flynn's story blew up on Trump when many others haven't. My answer? The specificity of the reporting. And then gives a clip from what looks like the Washington Post. Flynn's communications with Russian ambassador Sergei Kislyak, who, by the way, looks like a British character actor.
Oh.
Heavy set, double chin. He looks like the kind of guy that George C. Scott would wrestle down in the war room in front of
okay.
In front of Peter Sellers. Flynn's communications with Russian ambassador Sergei Kislyak were interpreted by some senior officials as an inappropriate and potentially illegal signal to the Kremlin that it could expect a reprieve from sanctions that were being imposed by the Obama administration. National Security Advisor Michael Flynn privately discussed these sanctions with the country's ambassador to the U.S. during the month before, contrary to public assertions by Trump officials, current and former U.S. officials said. Flynn on Wednesday denied he had discussed sanctions with Kislyak. Asked in an interview whether he had ever done so, he twice said no. Nate Silver's point, especially in this news climate where nobody trusts anything, there's a really big premium on details that can be verified or debunked. The Post story that I just read from had a who, what, where, and when on Flynn's conversation with Kislyak, which made the White House vague denials seem feeble. And then the New York Times article has even more detail, all of which is huge. So this is Malcolm Nance, security expert, and he writes, 1, Trump staffers are caught by the NSA CIA in communications with Russian intelligence services during the election. We're now fully in Benedict Arnold territory. We are one step away from Trump in direct collusion with Putin. Election legitimacy now in full question. A constitutional crisis is coming. Tom Nichols, who has been skeptical of overreacting from the liberal press, writes this morning, if it's proven that Trump's campaign actively cooperated with the Russians, you may don the freak-out pajamas.
Okay.
Tom Rath, who, again, is a GOP, ex-GOP head from New Hampshire, knows the New Hampshire Republicans fairly well. It seems doubtful that many of those who voted for Trump wanted to be this chummy with Moscow. Their patience is being tested right now. And my take on that, I think we talked about a little bit on Monday when we did the CBS YouGov poll. Point being that we have 22% of the country who are true believers and will swallow whatever Trump gives them. But we also have 22% who are the conditionals. And those are exactly the kind of people that are getting nervous about this because this is not what they signed on for. They signed on for Trump to bring back all the manufacturing jobs by getting rid of automation and Amazon, and magically it would happen. And then they're giving him about 3 weeks, and if it doesn't happen, they're going to turn on him. And now you throw this on top. That's not going to be good. 21% of the country is curious. That is to say, they oppose Trump but want to hear what he has to say. They don't want to hear what he has to say on this. It's not helping him win them over. And then there's the 35% resistors who are us. So the point being that a whole lot of the country is not accepting of what's going on right now, and that's why Trump's numbers are tanking. And we'll see what happens with that. Here's another graphic I sent you. This is the part of the pundit roundup this morning, titled "The Chaos in the White House Over Flynn Firing and Russia Connection." But I pulled up this picture of the Washington Post front page and threw on the New York Times front page on top of it. I don't know if you can see that graphic.
I got it. Okay, I don't know. Which one is this?
I marked it up with red ink. It's the red pencil one.
No, I'll say that's not it. Yeah, these appear funny in the Skype feed. They're links that I have to click on, and none of them are identified.
All right, so I'm going to do this just by throwing the very, very last one there, so it'll be at the bottom of the pile, easy for you to find.
That'll work. Let's see.
Okay, and there it is.
Okay, scrolling down. Okay, let's see. Open up. Signing into Skype. Please wait. I'm sitting in Skype. Why do I have to sign in? Okay, here we are.
Got it?
Yes.
All right, this is at the front page of Daily Kos for any of you who want to follow along, and it's the front page of the Washington Post last night when I was putting together the pundit roundup. Pence learned Flynn misled him 2 weeks after Trump. Others knew. And the top story, the main story, I helpfully pointed out, is Vice President sought details about Russia contacts after reading media accounts. And the other main story, senators from both parties pledged to deepen probe of Russia and the U.S. election. They're going to hear it from their constituents. Now, there's a minor story. Trump says the real story is illegal leaks. It isn't, and nobody really cares.
Okay.
Like, nobody really cares that he says, oh, it's all Hillary's fault. Right? Because, as somebody pointed out on Twitter, what happened is Flynn resigned to hide the fact that Clinton lost. I mean, is that the story you're going? Where it's a distraction. Yeah. No, I don't think so. And then, again, still on the front page of the Washington Post, Donald Trump's early moves, with some exceptions, have been marked by poor judgment, botched execution, hubris among some advisors, and a climate of fear and disorder all around, which I circled and said incompetence. This is one of our shared values here that everybody cares about, even on the right. And then, of course, my favorite, upheaval is now standard operating procedure in the White House. Once dismissed as growing pains, the chaos that was one of Donald Trump's trademarks in business now threatens to plague his presidency. I, of course, circled the word chaos and said, hey, this is chaos.
Is chaos a trademark of his in business?
Yeah, because what he likes to do, well, look at New Jersey. Look at what happened in Atlantic City.
Chaos.
But even on The Apprentice, what he likes to do is he likes to divide everybody who works for him into competing teams and then sit there and play, the judge and choose between them while they do all the work. And he loves the fact that they argue with each other. And he set the White House up to do the same thing, except it doesn't really work that way when you're actually trying to accomplish things. Because he thinks that running the country is a reality show. And the reality is, it's not. And that's what they mean by that.
Okay. I'll accept it.
And then I threw on top of that, by the way, Trump aide spoke to Russian intelligence, and that's an enormous story. Intercepted calls show contact during 2016. It not only suggests that at an inappropriate time when he was a civilian, he was having contacts with the Russian intelligence services. If it gets to the point where it is shown that this was also coordinated to try to sway the election, the very fact that that question even comes up at this point puts his entire presidency into the illegitimate cloud. And that's why it is such an enormous story. And that's why Malcolm Nance and all those other people are saying this is really big. You can't just throw this, away. You can't sweep it under the rug. It is why Mitch McConnell may not want to do any hearings about this, but he's going to be forced to by the public.
Yeah, it seems like the House being the House and the members being a little bit more secure in their seats because of gerrymandering, the House appears considerably less interested in doing any sort of investigation. The Senate,
yes, it'll come from the Senate. Pressure. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, the Republican senators certainly, they're on board, they're on the team. They'll do everything they can to suppress the worst of it. but they don't feel as comfortable saying, no, there won't be any investigation. The House members are just saying, no, we're just not going to do it. It doesn't matter how ridiculous this makes us look. We're just not doing it.
But here's the thing. You got to figure that with 2018 elections coming up,
yeah,
that's the only thing that matters. Right? I mean, to Congress, to the House, that's the only thing that matters. To the Senate, you have to look at those senators who are going to be up for election in 2018.
Yes.
Their biggest fear is being primaried on the right. If this inoculates them, because there's other issues more important than whether or not I support Trump, and it's possible that, depending upon where you are, this could happen, that frees up votes. Mm-hmm. If you are not worried about a primary, you can actually start to put your general election. I'm not saying they're putting country above party. They never do. Their first job is to get elected. But if they worry a little bit less about the primary because of political circumstances, then they can start worrying about the general election. And if they're worried about the general election, the whole equation changes.
Well, we'll have to see what people decide to do with this stuff. I mean, I don't know how sustainable the House position is on all this, but I guess they can just sit there and do nothing.
They could.
And they probably will. That's largely what I expect from them.
Right. Anyway, so Jay Rosen points out there is a story here from Greg Sargent in the Washington Post, just a little snippet of it here. This Flynn episode suggests that facts and reality do matter, just like Nate Silver was saying. The Trump White House is not invulnerable to them. A dogged and determined press corps can indeed ferret them out, notwithstanding the White House's efforts to render them meaningless and irrelevant, or indeed to make them disappear. So this is the Bush saying we make our own reality, but in fact reality does catch up with you. And Jay Rosen says reality is the opposition party. You wanted it that way, you got it. So now what Trump has managed to do with his incompetent and buffoon, feckless, whatever you want to call it, management style, is he's gotten the entirety of the press corps really ticked off with him. And these stories are, of course, coming from the press. Where are they coming from? They're coming from the intelligence community, of course. It's funny. Somebody tweeted, I don't have that in front of me, but pretty good observation. It's almost as if every time Sean Spicer opens up his mouth,
he puts gum in it.
He does. But he also says something stupid like, the last time he did this was yesterday. There's no evidence that the Trump administration had any contact with the Russians prior to the election. And then, boom, this story comes. And every time he says something else that just isn't true and opens his mouth, the intelligence community says, okay, now we know what story's coming out tonight. Boom, this one comes. You know, it's not that simple. It takes a lot of time to work a story like this, so on and so forth. But it's pretty remarkable. Every time they try to deny something and say it's absolutely not true, all of a sudden it's true, and here are the 5 people, and this is the dates, and this was the hotel that it happened, and this is the sequence, and here's the TikTok. Reporters love TikTok, you know, it's the timeline as to what this happens.
I don't know what the outputs
and boom, and then Spicer has to go back the next day and said, hey, it's your words, not my words. You know, and then the press says to him, Melissa, I mean, Spicy, what's going on here? You know, no, it's your words. Where's the super soaker? I mean, it's just farce now.
It's gotten that way. That was my favorite part of it. Your words. No,
Saturday Night Live. It was wonderful.
I said it, but you reported it. That makes it your words.
That makes it your words. And you know what? That's exactly what's happening in the press conferences.
Dang. Well, too bad for America, eh?
Yeah. Couldn't happen to a nicer authoritarian party. So Melissa McCarthy plays Spicer, and I still am waiting. I'm waiting for the press corps to just turn to Sean Spicer and say, Melissa, what are you talking about? And just get him mad.
I guess that would work. Although, who knows? Well, I don't know. I don't know what kind of punishment they can level anymore that would make any difference. I think it would be a badge of honor to get kicked out of the White House at this point. Right.
Hey, you up for some conspiracy theory?
Whose conspiracy theory is it?
Louise Mensch.
Oh, man. All right. I mean, yeah.
Yes or no? I mean, I don't have.
Yeah, you know what? I'll take it. Louise Mensch is a weirdo. She is, and I don't know whether
for those who don't know who she is, she's an ex-MP from England.
Yes.
She used to actually be a politician.
Right, like Steve Scott.
And then she got divorced. She came here to the U.S., remarried, I don't know the sequence there, but now is a columnist who has interest in national security and both writes and tweets stuff, which is sometimes interesting and sometimes out there.
I've been tempted many times. And so, okay. I mean, if this one caught your attention, it's probably not one of the completely lunatic ones, but
it might be,
giant grain of
salt.
Louise Mensch is a weirdo.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway.
Other than that.
So this one is called The Carolina Conspiracy, or How Vladimir Putin Catfished the U.S. Election with the Collusion of Team Trump.
Okay.
And the concept is that the Trump team used the fact that there was a group of hackers in North Carolina.
North Carolina?
Who were Russian hackers.
What?
Who essentially hacked Anthony Weiner's computer and put stuff on it. Not his sexting. I mean, that's his problem. But did they put extra emails on there and then say to the New York office of the FBI, go look at them?
I see.
Did they hack his computer and put stuff there, making the FBI look? The FBI looked. They then pushed Comey to make it public, and then we know what happened after that. That's really where the
okay. That is new.
Yeah, it is new. So that's why I thought this is interesting. And whenever she does anything, it's like, okay, can we please have somebody else verify this? Because I'm not taking this.
Please. But okay, that's not ludicrous. I
mean, that's why I'm looking at it. It's really interesting.
Yeah, okay.
In this story, I exclusively report the connections between the USSR CWA hacker group of North Carolina, Crackers with Attitude, CWA.
What? Okay.
Crackers with Attitude. And the sex with a 15-year-old girl from Gaston, North Carolina, that started the chain of events that led to Comey's forced letter to Congress, including the fact that the 15-year-old girl's email to Weiner is in fact a series of plagiarized texts unlikely any 15-year-old girl has read, including J.D. Salinger, David Foster Wallace, Charles Bukowski, and Fight Club by Chuck Palahniuk. There's also direct evidence that members of the Trump campaign were involved in this conspiracy and knew in advance what was coming, including Lara Trump, who visited Gaston, North Carolina, some days before she promised an October surprise and tricks up our sleeve.
Lara Trump.
I'm reading this and scratching my head and say, okay. But that's the basic concept. So she throws this out there and says there actually are a group of hackers. They do exist, and they've been linked to Russia, and so don't throw this away. You should all, check in on this.
How are they? Okay.
And so, okay, fine. So, she asked the question, who was Weiner actually talking to? Was it this group? And were these group Russian moles? And did they, tempt him? Did they catch him? And who are Crackers with Attitude, and how do they connect Weiner and Russia? The letters USSR and Cyrillic look like the American letter CWA.
Yes.
And be that as it may, CWA involved an underage English hacker who was arrested. Subsequent to his arrest, 2 of his co-conspirators in North Carolina also were arrested. Their attack on the U.S. was exceptionally serious. It involved obtaining emails from the director of the CIA and doxing hundreds of U.S. law enforcement and intelligence personnel. That's the part of the story that might actually be true. And the 15-year-old girl is also apparently from North Carolina, according to reports, and her father is an attorney. However, I can exclusively report there is extensive evidence online that the sex were not written by the 15-year-old girl, but by members of this group.
So now we're back to the sex.
So the sex were done by this group, which was an attempt to catch Weiner, and then use that catching in order to influence the campaign, because Weiner was married to a Clinton aide. That's the concept.
15-year-olds.
Well, that's what Weiner was doing.
Well, what?
Was it a fake? It's like Ashley Madison. There's
but
98% of the women are men.
Okay, so there's no but there is all right. Now I'm lost. Is there a 15-year-old girl in this or no?
We don't know.
All right.
Weiner was accused of sexting to a 15-year-old girl. Do we know that she exists? We do not.
Okay.
Was it this group? The fact that he was caught doing this means he's a sleaze and a perv. Nobody's saying he's not.
He's not saying.
But who got him to do this? That part of it is not really followed up because nobody really cares. It's all about the election.
Yes. I guess that's
is her point.
That's okay.
I'm not trying to make
that's
the case
a good
that she's
point.
right, but it intrigued me because, gee, there's a different angle. Whatever happened to that? Whatever happened to Wiener?
Yeah.
Whatever happened to that whole story? All of a sudden it's off the front page.
Dangerous is that is a good question. I don't know that the answer is it's a bunch of weirdos in North Carolina.
That's why I thought it was interesting. This is interesting.
Okay.
Now she's got it out there, claiming it's an exclusive story, and let's see where it goes. Let's see if anybody else picks up on it and follows it. That's all I'm saying.
Yes. Well,
I'm not Alex Jones. I'm just saying this
does.
this is a head scratcher here. I never saw this before.
That's true. I'm scratching my head like, why did you think that North Carolina was the place to look for your 15-year-old?
Because there are actual hackers who were actually arrested.
Well, okay. That I guess. I think I need to read more about what does she say that they're arrested for.
Right, and this may be a tomorrow show. Maybe we'll just do a little research on that.
It's possible.
Or not.
You know what? I mean, I'll take a look. I'm very, very leery of Louise Mensch.
I would think so.
I said as much.
Believe me, we did all the prefacing here. We're not suggesting this is, plenty of fake news out there. But it's of interest because everything about Comey and the election and why was Wiener in the last 11 days even on the table to discuss, and so on and so forth. This is now relevant because all of a sudden Comey was also sitting in all this other Russia thing, which is the real story. Not to distract from that. But everything that Comey did is now like, what?
Yes, that's true too. So I guess it. Okay.
So this is all part of that bigger picture of here's among the what's, like, why were you spending time on this? Even if she's right, why were you spending time on this, and why were you not spending time on Flynn and the bigger Russia story?
Yes,
and that's that to me is really where all this ties up. I don't really care about whether Louise Mensch is right or not, but it is fascinating.
I will say if I were, I guess, in Comey's shoes and I got this. In my inbox, I'd say, what?
Right.
And then I'd be on something else.
Spam, and I'd be on something else right away. I get that. I'm just saying that, not so much this little side trip down, I don't know what. The very fact that Comey was involved in making decisions about what to concentrate on and what not, and also what to say to the public and what not, is, as of last night, New York Times story, very much on the table now.
Okay.
Not as a distraction, but as part of the story.
I can see it. I'll tell the best I can say for Louise is she, like other people that I trust more, skips steps 2 through 9.
Yes, thank you, David. Absolutely true.
There we go.
This is a case where you have to go step by step. You cannot skip to step 10 on this one.
She spent the last couple of days insisting that she had ironclad evidence that some particular Russian oligarch keeps traveling back and forth to Mar-a-Lago, essentially, and flies his private jet into whatever airport Trump is parking his plane at. But I think,
right. And so something like the Mar-a-Lago dinner conversation with everybody in there, all the waiters who have never been security cleared, right? The ones that don't wear shirts, and they're all listening in on the North Korea incident and what we're going to do about it. And this same Russian oligarch is flying in and out just at the right moment. So I totally get what you're saying. All I'm saying is that even if it's weird stuff from the other side, the one thing that she offered that I thought was useful is none of her theory, but the reminder that whatever happened to Wiener and the rest of that stuff?
Yeah.
And why did it come up, 2 weeks before the election? And what's up with that? That reminder, I think, was the most valuable thing I read in that whole story. I don't really care about the rest of it.
We'll certainly take that away. I keep wanting to believe some of the stuff in there, too. So I don't know.
Right. We have to be careful about that. Fake news happens on every side, including anti-Trump and pro-Trump. I totally get that. But raising the question of how does the whole Wiener incident, forgetting about any of her part of it, fit into this whole Russia story, I think is a reasonable question to have on the table.
Well, that makes a reasonable argument that I can't dismiss out of hand for how those otherwise ridiculous tangents could possibly have been connected. And there really wasn't enough time in that compressed timeline right before the last couple of days before the election for extraneous material to just be injected. There really had to be some linkage. There's no, there wouldn't have been any reason for somebody as busy as Comey, even if he were dedicated to sinking Hillary Clinton in the last couple of days. The callback to Weiner, I mean, unless it was just, well, that's common ground everybody knows about. We can accuse that, or we can make that accusation again too. I mean, I guess that's a benign explanation for it, but this is a more fantastical one. But I don't know. I guess I'll read a little bit about the people arrested in North Carolina. Okay.
Yeah, see if we can find that and go from there. Anyway, so a little bit of this, a little bit of that. The main picture here, of course, is the entire large story about what's happening here. And again, for dates, it took 2 years for Nixon. June 17th, 1972 was the date of the Watergate break-in. August 9th, 1974 is when he resigned. And it's been less than a month for Trump. And things are not going well over at Chaos House there.
No.
1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
All right. Well, the longer it doesn't go well, the better for the rest of us.
Adam Sowert, to tie in what we were just talking about, has a tweet here. Jim Comey decided not to mention this publicly before the election, but he did decide to kneecap Clinton with a meaningless revelation. That's the only reason I brought it up.
Yeah.
This is a tweet from Hillary Clinton, 6th August 2016. Seriously, what's going on with Trump and Russia? Okay. October 4th, 2016 from Trump. Clinton's close ties to Putin deserve scrutiny. Remember, whenever Trump says anything accusing other people, it generally means he's doing it himself.
Yes.
We said that 1,000 times. It is so true with this one.
Yeah, I guess that's also true.
Here's a funny one. This is from Clint Smith. We tried to tell y'all. Ancient African-American proverb. I really like that one.
Yeah.
And Ned Resnikoff points out, in hindsight, maybe it was a mistake to put a bunch of white nationalist bloggers in charge of the federal government.
It might have been.
Right? That's in answer, Clint Smith says. Well, we tried to tell y'all.
Yeah.
Right? Anna Navarro, Republican. Oh. Again, these are Republicans who are talking about this. Nice try, Donald Trump. We won't be distracted. You knew, or should have known, Flynn lied about Russia a month ago. You played dumb. Why?
That's character acting.
Michael Steele, ex-RNC chairman. We talked about this on Monday. I think Mark Halperin hits key point on Morning Joe. Republicans must stand with Democrats for full investigation into General Flynn and Russia Connect. The GOP, the people who are thinking about the strategic position of the GOP further on down the road, which is to say anybody not in the House worried about their own election, is terrified of this because this could take the whole party down. You don't want to be the party of the people who blocked a foreign government investigation. You don't want to be accused of that and associated with a party that blocked that, as David Frum has been pointing out all morning on Twitter. That's a very bad position to be in.
Well, I don't mind them bringing it.
Okay, and then here's this last one here. This is a tweet from Bob Volfov, V-U-L-F-O-V. Really? Got my hands on the first page of tomorrow morning's presidential briefing.
Okay.
It's very funny. Presidential Daily Brief, 15 February 2017. I think that's on the Skype thing somewhere. But I will just give it to you again. I'll give you the URL so you can read along with us. And you at home can do that too later by looking at Scott Anderson's summary. Presidential Daily Brief, 15 February 2017, classified. 1. Oh boy. And then there's subheadings here. Under number 1, oh boy, are the general bullet points. 1, honestly, we're pretty boned. 2, no way around it, boss. 3, things are not looking good. 4, Jesus effing Christ. 5, watching the news last night was like being in a parallel universe where dogs are in the White House. 6, let's try to sweep this under the rug. Maybe we leak a fake alternative scandal like, I don't know, Ivanka and Trudeau. Just spitballing, I don't know.
That might work.
Right? Point 2. We should send an edible arrangement to Vice President Pence because you screwed him pretty hard on this one. Point 3, Russia has secretly deployed a new cruise missile, violates landmark arms control treaty. Russians now have 2 battalions of this prohibited cruise missile, one near Volgograd and another in an operational base somewhere else in the country. This is somehow the least of our concerns.
Yes.
Number 4, Secret Service Director announces retirement. Guy Fieri, not interested in the role. Neither is Kid Rock. We tried RoboCop as well, but it turns out he's a character from a movie.
Oh, well. That wouldn't stop
So
us.
that's the quality of the briefings in the third-rate White House with the third-rate personnel that Trump is getting every day, and he's got to decide what to do with the free world based on this.
Well, this is fake because there's too many bullet points and there's no map.
Yeah, exactly. And there's no pictures.
Right.
There's no Trump draws, Mickey
Literally,
Mouse.
can't have more than 9 bullet points. It
Or a
says
train,
right
yeah. Anyway, it was pretty funny, I thought. And it gives you a sense of what's going on here. I mean, the place is under siege. This is a big deal. And it's going to really suck up all of their energy to deal with this because they have no other choice. And that's good. Like I said before, it's good for us because it's going to put the brakes on some of the agendas here despite what Congress wants. So follow Congress, especially the Senate, see what they do, see how they react. It's only going to grow. Let's see if there's other revelations to come. I'm sure there are. And just getting comments from the people who are named by the Times is going to take another 24 hours of the cycle, so it ain't going away. And there are people, experienced news folks, whether it's Dan Rather or Chuck Todd or other people are saying this is huge. And it's not a one-day story, and it's not one of those things that Trump can distract by doing 5 other things. This is the story, and it involves 2 separate things, each of which are huge. Huge thing number 1 is foreign power trying to interfere with a presidential election, with therefore bringing up Trump's legitimacy. And the other is that same foreign power trying to influence U.S. policy in a way advantageous to that foreign power, with things like weakening the country so that ballistic missiles on Russia's side can be deployed with the least amount of resistance from our side. And if you want to get your GOP associated with the party that allowed that to happen, good luck to that, because a lot of the country is not going to go for it.
Yes. Well,
That's my summary. I hope that tried to tie in all those loose ends there because there's a whole lot going on. But to me, that's the big picture.
It's pretty huge at that. Well, we'll look at various smaller parts of it, I suppose, over the next couple of days, unless, of course, it explodes into something even bigger by tomorrow morning.
Exactly. And who knows, it might. Take care. This is Greg Orkin speaking with my friend David Waldman, Kagro in the morning. See, there weren't any huge flights of fancy out into elephants and riders. I did listen to the show yesterday. Thank you very much for bringing up elephants. I really like that. Yes, but for today, let's see what Joan has to say, and let's see how Congress is reacting. And I will be back on Thursday. That's tomorrow. And we'll see what did happen overnight, and we'll go from there. Yeah. Take care, and have a great show.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the great start. And, wow, Louise Mensch. Okay. We are there. Louise Mensch, the other day, as I mentioned, she was trying to sew together the story of one, or I've lost track of which Russian oligarch she was talking about, who was flying into West Palm Beach Airport, I guess, which is the closest to Mar-a-Lago, although it used to be, she used to try to tell these stories indicating that the 2 planes were at the Trump's plane and this other plane were at the same airport. I think these days, during the campaign, when Trump was flying his own plane, I think they used West Palm Beach as their access airport to Mar-a-Lago. And I don't think that he does anymore now that he's flying on Air Force One. And I think they pretty much close whatever airport it is that he uses. So I don't think it's even possible to fly the oligarch into the same, unless he flies in a couple days in advance and then sits and waits there. But I don't know. I don't know what the details are, but I remember this, that over the weekend, I think, she had tweeted out some kind of picture and said, this oligarch is on the ground once again, mysteriously, at the same time as Trump and his entourage. And she tweeted this picture of the plane that certainly the use of this particular picture, I mean, it's a private jet. And you can get stock photography of private jets. That's not a hard thing to do. But it was being offered up from one of the private jet and all the aviation tracking websites and databases. I don't know whether she used FlightAware. That's the one I've seen most often. And they have pictures of all these. You can track planes by their tail numbers and see where they fly to. And she offered up this picture. You can also get people do plane spotting much the way they do train spotting. I don't understand either of those 2 hobbies. But Yeah, the photo she offered up had a very clear shot. It was being offered for the shot of the tail number, and she went on about how, it's this Russian oligarch and he's flying in wherever Trump goes, and you can, on the same site that you can find the tail numbers, you can look up who owns the thing, and there's no indication at all anywhere in the ownership records. And I understand you maybe would try to obscure this by running things through shell corporations, but I mean, offering up the story that this oligarch is here, and you can tell because here's his plane, and then you look up the plane, and it belongs to like a beauty supply company, and somewhere in, I don't know, I forget even where they're incorporated. It doesn't even matter. It had no clear indication anywhere on the page that it had anything to do with this Russian guy that she was alleging was there, and it's very weird. And again, you're missing steps 2 through 9 here, Louise. What's the rest of it? Maybe I missed it because I wasn't paying attention to our previous discussions, but you know, there has to be a trail here so that people who are joining the conversation late can still figure out that you're not just completely bonkers, and she could use some work on that front. Anyway, I don't think I need to unravel any more of that. But Josh Warren, I think you saw the same tweet over the weekend, and you saw the same thing. I mean, I retweeted the thing because I thought the story was an interesting possibility, although I was really more interested in the idea that there would be such a person who would be showing up at West Palm Beach Airport. But I was confused even then about why that photo was selected. It didn't make any particular sense. And let's see. Oh, yeah, right. Here's the tweet you've linked back to here. Right. What was really weird, though, was, the tweet we were sharing and that she had shared was not even from her. It was from somebody else, Steve. Hi, Steve. How you doing? He tweets apparently as 2020, please hurry. And the weirdness was, so the Russian suspected of being Putin link flies into Palm Beach today where Trump is, and the windows at Mar-a-Lago are blacked out. WTF? Question mark. And I did think that was weird, as did most of the rest of the world, that they had, as he says, blacked out the windows at Mar-a-Lago. You remember, this is when the Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo, as Donald calls him, was golfing with the president, and they put the press in the basement down there, and then they covered the windows in black garbage bags. I was curious about why those black garbage bags aren't just being torn down, but they didn't want them to take any pictures of the two of them playing golf. And that led to all sorts of other theorizing, like, oh my God, maybe it's not just the Japanese prime minister out there, but one of the Russian oligarchs who could be saying horrible things or plotting horrible things with Trump. And then photos started circulating of somebody in the golfing party that they were at first insisting was that Russian oligarch. And then you'd say, oh my God, we've got to, do something about this. And then by the afternoon, they were like, oh, that's not really him. It just looks a little bit like him, which seems like a pretty weak premise to have freaked out on, but okay. Anyway, so there's this accusation that the Russian suspected of being the Putin link is in Palm Beach, then saying what's up with the blacked out windows, but offering up two pictures. One of the blacked out windows, which was real and actually did happen and is weird and is worthy of comment. The other was of this, like I said, this private jet. And it's, relatively small private jet, and the photo prominently features this tail number. And I guess, isn't the implication here in including these two photos that one, here's proof that the windows were blacked out, and the other would, I guess, logically be, here's proof that oligarch is in town. Except it wasn't proof that oligarch was in town, because if you look up the tail number, it doesn't tell you anything. It tells you that it's owned by Beauty Central LLC. And unless that's this oligarch's company, and there is nowhere in this offered any explanation for why we were supposed to believe that this oligarch owned Beauty Central LLC, that was problematic. In addition to which, It tells you on FlightAware, the one I've been using, and as Josh captured here in his own screen grab, it tells you where this plane, and in case you're interested in tracking it yourself, it's the tail number was N999LR. And Beauty Central, this is another mystery. Beauty Central, anybody ever heard of it? I haven't. It must be a gigantic company, though, unless something weird is going on, because they own like 4, 5, 6 different planes. That's bizarre. I don't really know what that could possibly be about, but okay. Anyway, but this one particular plane, which was offered up in this tweet, and again, I guess I have to point out, the tweet wasn't originally from Louise Mensch. It was just grabbed by, retweeted by, and incorporated into her narrative. But it tells you on FlightAware, you can track by tail number, where is this plane? Where has it been the last couple of days? And it's not in Palm Beach. It's not in Florida anywhere. It doesn't make any, I don't know. So you tell me, what does that make you think of Louise Mensch? I guess it makes you think maybe you only want to take only the very smallest amount of what she has to say, and then take that with a tremendous grain of salt. I don't know. I find her somewhat scattered, and that's me talking. I find her thinking somewhat scattered, and I'm a little skeptical of it. And I don't know. Does anybody listening in the UK have any memory of how Louise Mensch was as an MP? I said before, just sort of offhandedly, she wasn't a good MP. That is to say, she was a bit of a crackpot conservative MP, I thought. I mean, crackpot conservatives can just as easily be anti-Trump conservatives as anybody else. It's not like she's been a natural ally for decades and has since given up on being an MP and moved to the United States. I think she's just coincidentally anti-Trump. And so we're happy to listen, at least for a time. Anyway, all right. What other things do I want to mention here? I know we're expecting Joan, although I'm not certain what's going on inside the inner workings of the editorial meetings over at Daily Kos. I don't think there's anything tremendously exciting happening on the Senate floor today, although maybe she's watching the House. Who knows? But the Senate, I believe, continues with its plodding pace that we discussed yesterday. No indication of any change so far that I know of in that. And just again, one more reminder. The Trump administration is going to be hamstrung in putting together its working governmental agenda because Democrats are doing an admirable job, I think, in slowing down the process. They may never get to their actual legislative agenda if they have one. They may just end up staying on these nominations practically forever. Let's see, some new comments coming in about this stuff. Grant Brown commenting, is Beauty Central a Russian model or prostitution/human trafficking operation? That did occur to me, and it's a good question. I have no indication whatsoever, one way or the other, about it. There's very little that's available on, certainly on FlightAware, and my Googling of Beauty Central LLC tells me almost nothing as well. There's lots of filings about, where it's incorporated, but even without the LLC, Beauty Central, I have no idea what they do. I got no idea how to find out what they do. Somebody else with better Google foo will have to figure out what they do and how it is that they could have so many planes. That's a good question. Again, I don't know why they would have to fly around the country, but if it was McDonald's Corporation, I'd say that's a huge corporation. They are going to have a lot of planes. I never really know why, but it seems to go hand in hand. This corporation, no idea. No idea what they do. Human trafficking would be a good excuse for having lots of planes, though. Let's see. What else have we got here? Matthew Edmond tweeting, the tail number of the oligarch's plane is MKATE. M-KATE. MKATE. It belongs to one of his shell companies. It was in Florida on the 10th. That, I have seen her say that. Matthew, by the way, if you want to find Matthew's tweet, he's not tweeting as Matthew Edmond, but rather as PZLMA. Okay, just putting it out there, but that's what confused me. So the tail number of the oligarch's plane, she has said, is MKATE, and then there's this picture of the Beauty Central plane that doesn't say MKATE on it anywhere. Do you know why that happened? Let's see. Parleo, speaking of Mensch, says Mensch launches rival to Twitter. This is written up in The Guardian, a rival to Twitter. I don't know why you would feel the need to do that, but we'll take a look. I'm just curious. Now, Louise Mensch launches rival to Twitter. Mention.com. Mention. That's cute. That's very nice. So that would be MENSHN. There's no C in the Mensch.com, but there's a C in her name. Her last name is MENSCH, like the Yiddish. You're such a mensch. But Mention, MENSHN.com, will allow users to debate a subject rather than monitor a stream of often divergent tweets. Interesting idea. Let's see. So are we interested in figuring this thing out? I guess. So when did this happen? When was this reported? This article is 4 years old. How do you like that? I like that feature of The Guardian. They just tell you over on the edge there. And it's right under the buttons for tweeting or sharing it on Facebook or emailing it. Now it will say this article is 4 years old. Excellent feature. Beautiful idea. Fantastic. Whatever happened to it? Well, like all rivals to Twitter, nothing. She was then Tory MP, Louise Mensch. Just curious about what this is all about here. Has made her debut as an internet entrepreneur with the launch of a new social network, hoping to win over Twitter addicts who find Twitter frustrating. Well, that's all of them. Didn't work, though, did it? Mensch launched the U.S.-only social network, the almost eponymous Mention.com, on Tuesday. That would have been Tuesday of... was that the previous Tuesday? Because this was dated Tuesday, the 19th of June, 2012, just to give you the time frame here. She launched it as a topic-based site allowing people to debate by subject rather than monitor a stream of often divergent tweets. Interesting idea. She says that the site was not named after her. It's a play on the word mention, but we like it and think it'll work fine as a chat site. Well, it didn't. I don't know. Anything else we care to mine out of this? I don't know. Just sort of an interesting point, though. Thanks for bringing it up, Parleo. I guess she is a little bit of an oddball. And, well, the rival to Twitter, I guess, just didn't work out. All right. What else did we want to touch on today? Let's see. Scanning my pocket news. Oh, by the way, did you know that the Trump campaign had repeated contacts with Russian intelligence? I don't know if we mentioned that. I wanted to make sure that everybody heard about that one. Oh, yes. Something I should have mentioned with Greg. Perhaps we'll touch on it if we've got time tomorrow, but I just thought I'd throw this one out there. New York Magazine reporting this one. Donald Trump just broadcast a dangerous misconception about autism rates. Those who advocate for sound evidence-based research about autism are extremely alarmed about Donald Trump, and for good reason. In addition to Trump's ties to Andrew Wakefield, the disgraced British doctor whose debunked research helped fuel the false idea of links between childhood vaccines and autism, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., a notorious anti-vaxxer himself, told reporters back in January that Trump planned to tap him as chair of the Commission on Vaccine Safety. We knew about that one, of course. There is no question at this point that Trump has significant connections to a pseudoscientific medical movement that spreads dangerous, disproven ideas. But today, that being yesterday, Trump gave nervous observers yet more reason to worry. It occurred at a White House event in which Trump and the Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos, met with a bunch of educators. That's a good idea. Trump seemed to fixate for a moment on one educator named Jane. Her last name is hard to make out. That's a hell of a name. Hard to make out. I would change that. But they obviously couldn't tell what it was from the recording. But anyway, Jane explained that she is the principal of a special education center in Virginia. And apparently there's video of it. I guess after Jane noted that many of her students have autism, Trump asked, have you seen a big increase in the autism with the children? Jane replied in the affirmative, but seemed to couch her response as being more about an increase in demand for services. She didn't explicitly agree that there's been a big increase in the overall rate. Trump continued, so what's going on with autism? Who are these autistic people? Is basically what he's asking here. When you look at the tremendous increase, it's really a horrible thing to watch. The tremendous amount of increase. Do you have any idea? And you're seeing it in the school? Jane replied again in a way that seemed a bit non-committal vis-a-vis Trump's claim that the rate of autism is something like 1 in 66 or 1 in 68 children, to which Trump responds, well, now it's got to be even lower, presumably meaning higher rate-wise than that, which is just amazing. Well, maybe we can do something. Jane had the rate right, and Trump is incorrect that it has crept any higher. Trump's obviously here broadcasting a very inaccurate and misleading claim about autism, one that you often hear from the Kennedys and Wakefields of the world, but with which experts flatly disagree. I'm going to change the structure of that sentence to make it better. Purveyors of this claim, well, you know the claim, obviously. The link between, preservatives usually in the vaccines and a falsely reported, I guess, increase in the rate of autism. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that one out there. Maybe that's something we can discuss a little bit with Greg tomorrow if we have some time for it. I just saw a note come in from Armando. He says he has an interesting hypothetical discussion for me regarding remedies for Russia and Trump. Well, you want to give it a shot, or you could save it for tomorrow or Friday, depending on Joan's schedule. I haven't heard from her, but that's not unusual. This is usually about the time when I'll get a note that says, okay, I'll be there in a minute or two. But if you want to pose it, either in writing or if you want to phone in real quick and pose it, we can do that. I'll tell you what, though, if maybe make a note to yourself if we can't fit the whole discussion in to come back to it, because I've been thinking about the little amount of time that we spent on the show and that others spent learning about the Logan Act, and then noting for the record a couple days ago that no one has ever actually been prosecuted under the Logan Act. Don't sleep on the Logan Act just yet. I have a theory about how that could come back into play at some point. Okay, Joan tells me she'll be here in a minute or two, but would of course welcome Armando to the discussion. There's not a lot to talk about in terms of what's happening in Congress. Not that Joan is limited to that, but it might not be a bad idea to interject that. I'm sure she'd probably be fascinated to talk about what the hell's going on with Russia. So why don't you go on ahead there, Armando? You can call in and pose your question, and maybe that'll interest Joan as much as anything else these days. I mean, her latest is related to Russia anyway, so we might as well go ahead. I mean, she's if you've been following Joan's stories over at Daily Kos, then you know what I'm talking about. Her latest here, Jason Chaffetz demands answers from the Trump regime, but not about Russia. Well, you can see that that's on her mind too. Okay, hey Armando.
Hey.
All right, let's see. What are you talking about here?
Let's play out a scenario, because I think it sounds crazy, but I think it's not. It's gotten less crazy. Let's suppose investigations happen and it's proven beyond a reasonable doubt that Trump and his team colluded with the Russians during the election. Okay. And let's further, because there's a Republican Congress, I don't think that's as important for my hypothetical. I'm going to add a second part of my hypothetical. A wave in 2018, Democrats take the Congress back, both houses.
Okay. I'm going to add Joan here. Just a second. Hey, Joan, just in time to hear Armando's theory. Good morning.
No, it's a hypothetical. I mean, it's not a theory.
Sorry. Yes.
And good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, let's hear it.
My first point was, okay, it's proven Trump and Russia colluded.
Okay.
Knowingly. It wasn't some third-rate guy. It was Trump knew.
Okay.
Trump knew about it and ordered it.
All right, so
and it's
hypothetically.
Yeah. And then, in theory, let's say Democrats take back the Congress. The normal course of action would be impeachment and removal from office if you had enough votes. But then it's Pence. Or if you want to take Pence out, then it's Ryan.
Yeah.
Is there something else that could be done? Constitutionally, no. But is the Constitution a limit here? Could a Democratic Congress, I pose it to you, David, and you, John, order a new election?
Wow. Could they order a new election? Well, you could certainly try that. I mean, if they passed a statute or purporting to, to have that power and ordering a new election, that's a good question. That I'd have to do some rereading about. You'd still have the Constitution standing as a barrier. We'd have to review what does it say about the frequency of elections. It may very well be that the actual phrasing in the Constitution is, okay, well, the elections will be every, 2 years for the House and every 6 years for each class of senators, or such schedule as the Congress may decide. I mean, if it says that, then I guess it would be wide open. I'd have to review that language.
But we'll talk just about the presidency. Of course, the Constitution does.
Oh, right.
provide,
yes. Right.
Yeah, the presidency
4 years,
is every 4 years.
Yeah, okay.
But, I can play a lot of games with the language in the Constitution. And
well, the better bet,
yeah.
Constitutionally, the better bet would be waiting until after the midterms. But then you're taking the chance that you lose and you don't have the ability to impeach him.
Okay,
but
here's what it says.
We have
it says
an extremely crippled White House.
Well, let's look at the language. The language of the Constitution says the president shall hold office during the term of 4 years, together with the vice president chosen for the same term be elected, and it describes how the elections happen. Of course, now we're talking about him having been impeached and removed. And there's a succession. There's a line of succession.
Yes. Now, I will point this out. Before we go too much further on this, Steve Brown here pointing out, if you impeach, if the assumption is that only a Democratic Congress will impeach, then Ryan is no longer in a line of succession.
Right.
Good point.
Right. It'd be Nancy Pelosi.
Well, you know what? That's my hypothetical answer.
Okay.
Now that I thought about it, let's impeach both of them, and Nancy Pelosi becomes president.
Yes, which is why she is once again campaigning on, don't talk about impeachment.
Is she again?
Well, it's a little early to be talking about impeachment. I know that you have a thing.
Well, it's early where you are.
But impeachment, Kagro, but it is a little early.
Well, only because you're in the mountain time zone.
It was appropriate discussion on day one.
I think we need to see Republicans shooting themselves in their foot a little bit more on this, and they're doing a good job of it.
Let me make a formalist argument why it's not too early to be talking about impeachment. 1201, the President of the United States was in deliberate violation of the Constitution. He is violating the Emoluments Clause.
Yes. But nobody cares about that.
I'm saying that politically, you need a little bit of time to make that case.
Oh, no, politically we have to, you'd have to win the 2018 election. I mean, that's really, if you're going to talk about it. The Republican Russians.
Republicans, Russians, it's all the same.
Are clearly going to do whatever, in the House particularly. You could argue the Senate, as you can see from the reaction to this story, could, be flipped enough that you could get to 67 if you won, say you had 52 or 53. You might be able to get rid of them. The House they're crazy. This Nunes guy is very upset about the leaks. He's perfectly fine with Russia's, the context with Russia. It's unbelievable. They would take that reaction. And then, in fact, now that we've solved my hypothetical, I bet that's what you want to talk about in Congress, Joan, which is the way the Republicans in the Congress have reacted to this story. Yes, the Republican senators have gotten on the right side of it, at least in terms of their rhetoric. But the House is incredible. The head of the Intelligence Committee is like, hey, it's no problem. And of course,
The head of the Intelligence Committee, let me just say, needs to recuse himself. He won't, but he needs to because he was on the transition team.
Thank you. Absolutely true.
I had forgotten that. I just thought
He
dumb.
he very well may be implicated in the story.
Yeah.
Because as part of he headed up in theory. This is what Olivier Knox tweeted out. I didn't get any confirmation, but Joe obviously did. He tweeted out that he managed the intelligence part of the transition. Well, that would be him managing one Michael Flynn, presumably.
Mm-hmm.
So he's implicated.
Very much so.
What did he know, and when did he know?
Get Paul Ryan to do anything about that. But, that's one of the things to keep hammering on, to make Paul Ryan look more and more and more craven. Because, as we know right now, if he can get his tax cuts in the next 2 years out of Donald Trump, he's going to ignore everything he possibly can. We just have to, and Senate Democrats have to make that untenable. It's not going to come out of the House because, as you said, they're nuts. Jason Chaffetz says, well, Flynn's gone. It's taking care of itself. I don't have to worry about this.
Yes.
That was quite a remarkable thing to say.
Yes.
Yeah, and a related matter, of course, is Jefferson Sessions saying that he's not going to recuse himself from the Russia investigation. And according to Matthew Miller, the former DOJ person who's talked about Comey's misdeeds a lot and very effectively, he says that the rules in justice are abundantly clear. The fact Sessions does have to recuse himself.
Yeah, but that's just rules.
Yes, I know. Comey had rules too, and they didn't seem to matter at all. But which circles back to my original premise. Since rules don't matter, why can't we just order a new election?
I guess that's true, right? Yeah, now, that'd be an interesting way of saying it. What do you mean a new election?
Or retroactively get rid of the Electoral College. We're going to talk about changing the rules.
Right.
There you go. Let's pass a law that abolishes the Electoral College. But the Constitution created it. Well, so what?
Right, that'd be interesting, and there'd be huge outcry from the Trump camp and say, this is the chaos you were asking for. What's the matter with you? I'm doing you a favor here, Bannon. Thought you hated this stuff. You're a Leninist.
Yeah, I'm not going to be a psychologist, but this morning Trump was a little nutty on Twitter.
Yes, he appears to be having a meltdown. I think Adam Sarwark termed it a meltdown. Just this morning.
Every morning, but this one was very interesting.
This morning's was, and it, yeah. I liked, particularly, completely unrelated to anything, nonsense with a hyphen. Just it's a reflection of where Trump is this morning.
That's Scavino, though, don't you think? I mean, I think that was Scavino this morning for some reason. I mean, he was probably beside Trump or something, or Trump was on the phone. But I think Scavino was the one typing in.
Oh, okay.
That's my theory.
Trump has said that he dictates tweets, which I find incredible.
Well, probably because his thumbs are too little to.
Maybe it. I mean, you see pictures of him holding the phone all the time, but he does say he dictates them, then I find it amazing that how could it be so difficult to get his phone away from him if he's constantly handing it to other people?
Yeah.
So I don't know. This is a very weird thing. So hyphenating nonsense. What else did he? Oh, he hyphenated cover up today, which can be done when you're using it as a certain part of speech, but not the part of speech he was using it for today. But and as a verb, I wouldn't. Anyway, this is kind of weird.
It was weird. I mean, he contradicted himself. He says it's fake news, except it's horrible leaks, which sort of just doesn't make sense. But the thing that I was wondering, and I read this morning, Byron York said that Byron York, he's just laughable. He says Trump needs to go back on the campaign trail. He's got plenty of accomplishments to tout and to support. He listed 10. The Muslim ban,
Didn't work.
the executive order on something, I forget they were all crazy nonsense. But he's 3 weeks in, and he's going on a victory tour, is Byron York's suggestion.
Well, Stephen Miller the other day on the Sunday shows made that ridiculous claim that Trump in 3 weeks has done more than most administrations do in their entire terms, and he's done nothing.
Which
literally
actually,
nothing.
Well, and Sean Spicer said yesterday that Trump has been incredibly tough on Russia. So
yeah, right.
Oh, well, all right. Then.
Right. But I'm actually curious what is actually on. I know they passed this law that eliminated the disclosure requirement on foreign corruption for energy companies.
Yes, payments to foreign governments.
they're to, inject a little procedure in this. They're using the Congressional Review Act
Yes.
to get
Oh, right.
rid of those last regulations that
Which I'm confused about. That only came up in the last 6 months. That was only a 2016 reg. We didn't have it before. It's interesting.
Yeah. There was a big push to get this stuff done before Obama left.
Why didn't we push it sooner?
I don't know. Nobody remembered the Congressional Review Act, which is hard to believe because they have used it before. And you see a lot of almost everything that's moving from the House and being taken up in the Senate that's legislative is CRA because it's the only thing they can do because otherwise they'll be filibustered.
And, to go back, the reason why they didn't do it sooner, they didn't push it through faster, was because they expected Hillary Clinton to be in the White House.
Yes.
I did too.
Yeah.
But I'm somebody that said Breyer and Ginsburg should have retired in 2013.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say.
Yeah. I know.
I'm that kind of person that says, yeah, that's great, but you're wonderful.
But then when we have 3 vacancies on the Supreme Court right now?
No, 2013, we still control the Senate.
Yeah.
This is something that you need to make up a laminated card like clock management for the coaches on the sidelines in a football game. At 7 months left in your administration.
Let's just game everything possible out.
Right. Work it backwards. Make sure that these regs are finalized 7 months in.
I didn't second guess on that. I first guessed, though. I said it at the time, so it's
okay.
You can look it up. But look,
Yes,
the regs, I don't know what regs. I mean, I didn't even know that reg existed. I'll be honest with you. I had no idea.
No.
So I'm not going to pretend that I was urging that particular reg be done without that 6 month period. But here's my question for Joan, though. What is the first actual piece of legislation that Trump is going to sign? I mean, these things are, I'm not saying they're not important, but you know what I mean.
I have no idea. It's probably going to be tax cuts. Whether that goes with any kind of Obamacare repeal, that's the big question.
Yeah,
that's what they want to do first. I don't see how they're going to get there at this point. The real piece of legislation, I think it's anybody's guess. Probably taxes.
Well, they talked about, I saw the discussion on taxes, and they said they were going to use regular order and do some huge tax overhaul, which...
Yeah, but they say a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be reconciliation. Bush 2003 style is what it's going to be, right?
Yeah.
So all of it, they'll do the...
It just depends on how, the timing of it is all screwed up because they're still, of course, completely lost on Obamacare. They have no clue.
I just don't think they can do anything with that. I think that's so much of that is outside the realm of reconciliation.
Yeah.
I don't see how it
problem
works.
that we've got on Obamacare right now is more with Tom Price at HHS and the things he can start to try to unravel in terms of regulation and the things that the IRS can do.
Yes.
Which it is now saying is going to do, which is not enforce the individual mandate.
I've always been a much more skeptical mandate person, and I think it more so now after.
Well, it's not necessarily the actual effect it has on people signing up for Obamacare as it does insurance companies having an excuse to get out of the system.
Oh, I see. Like Humana. What's Humana? Humana supposedly is leaving. I don't know why. But
well, ostensibly it's because it's gotten too expensive for them and it's not working and they're not getting the right kind of customers. It's because of their attempts to merge with Aetna.
Yeah, it's the same Aetna story, right? I mean, there's nothing new, or they're just pretending that had nothing to do with it. They're
pretending.
Yeah, but we all know that it's not true.
Yeah, but you know.
Okay.
We're in
I don't know.
world.
I thought one of the hardest problems Ryan has, and more so than McConnell, because McConnell doesn't care about, I don't think, about these big philosophical sweeping tax reform nonsense. He wants to do favors for his people.
Yes,
right?
And he wants to keep winning. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't really care about sweeping tax reform. He wants, a special tax break for this and eliminate this reg for that guy. I mean,
he's not the Paul Ryan true believer.
So I think he's got less of a problem than Ryan, because Ryan's, I guess, still dreams of grand bargain type stuff too. Though I guess not bargaining so much now, except maybe with Trump on Medicare and Social Security.
Yeah, I still don't think Trump, it's the level of how much he cares about Medicare and Social Security. I mean, he's been politically astute on it before, saying that's political suicide to do these things.
I think he's not going to touch that. I've always been, I think there's three things that Trump is actually pretty firm on. It's not touching Social Security and Medicare. He thinks that's political suicide. That's probably why I don't think he really cares about it so much, as he just thinks it's suicide. And trade, which he thinks what he thinks on trade. It's nuts, but that's what he thinks.
Yeah.
Listen, I mean, I've been critical of our side. Our side is pretty nuts on trade. I don't want to get into a fight with you guys about that today, but you know how I feel that I don't think our discussion on trade is particularly helpful, and I could see real damage being done there, but we'll see. Anyway, you answered my hypothetical. President Pelosi in 2019.
Yes. But before you go, because it sounds like you're trying to, let's talk about Gorsuch a little bit.
Okay.
And what all this means for a Supreme Court nomination, and how should Democrats be reacting?
Well, I think that my first reaction is I believe that seat should be saved for President Pelosi.
There we go. Well, that was one of the better comments I had seen on Gorsuch on Twitter. Somebody saying, this is not fair. President Trump should not be allowed to nominate a Supreme Court justice in his last year in office.
No, my serious answer is it's going to come down to blowing up the filibuster. It's going to happen. They don't care. There's nothing Trump can do except die that will keep them from, even then, because I guess the nomination stays in place, particularly since Pence would be the president at that point. They're going to get Gorsuch. They're going to do whatever it takes to get Gorsuch. I don't think there's anything we can do about it, but we should do everything we can about it anyway.
Yeah.
Because it's a matter of principle. It's wrong that Merrick Garland's not on the court. He should have been confirmed. He wasn't even given a hearing. There's many things that are wrong about Gorsuch. Almost everything, in fact, and he's not in the mainstream. He's an extremist. You've seen the chart that shows him to the right of Alito, right?
Yep.
He's just a shade to the left of Clarence Thomas.
Of Thomas, yeah.
And I think he's a bad person too, from everything I've read.
I would think that if he had the principle that the far right is trying to say he has, he wouldn't allow himself to be nominated by Donald Trump, or he would withdraw his nomination now.
Yeah, well,
Nobody's doing that.
he wants to be Supreme Court
Yeah.
justice.
Yeah, I know,
Sure.
but do you want to be the Supreme Court justice put on the court by Donald Trump? He's going to serve with an asterisk for the rest of his life.
Yeah, he'll still
But
get
I
a
guess
vote.
serving on the Supreme Court for his rest of his life. So
right. And didn't bother Rehnquist any.
true.
He
Yeah,
had a
and
grand old
Rehnquist
time.
got it before the scandals engulfed. But look, I mean, it's always going to be an asterisk, and I think he's made his peace with that. And what I guess the real question is there any possibility they won't nuke the filibuster? And I just, it takes who are the three Republicans?
I think that gets harder. The worse Trump looks, the harder it gets for Susan Collins, who wants to be governor in Maine, Jeff Flake, Dean Heller, who have to run for re-election in 2018, McCain and Graham, who have been screaming about this for years, about maintaining the filibuster. As Trump gets worse and worse, it gets harder and harder for them to argue doing this for this president. So, I'm feeling better about them not nuking the filibuster as every day progresses.
Yeah, I mean, the other side of that coin, and why I think nuking the filibuster is absolutely going to be necessary now is you'll get Manchin and you'll maybe get Heitkamp and possibly Tester, though Tester might have to think about that one at this point. I don't know what Heitkamp's going to do. I feel for her, by the way, because I think she's trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, I think so too.
More so than Manchin, but Manchin, it's West Virginia. I mean, what are we going to do? I mean, I don't even pay attention to Manchin. To me, he's, what are you going to do with him?
I think Tester's okay, and I think Tester will stay okay.
Yeah, I think so too. He was interesting on television yesterday. It's, I don't know. Obviously, these guys all do their polling, and they know what's what on the ground in their states. But he seemed a little tougher on Trump yesterday to me when I saw him on television. But the Heitkamp, I have to really tip my hat to, because that's a ridiculously hard race for her.
Mm-hmm.
But as much as possible, she's trying to do the right thing.
I think so.
I'm actually kind of impressed on her principles. Of all the people, there's two people that I've been impressed with since the election on our side, particularly. One is Heitkamp for her very sincere attempts to do the right thing. There's lots of things that I've seen her do, which if I was her political advisor, I might have told her, don't do that. I'm pretty impressed by that. The other is just on performance. Adam Schiff, the congressman from California, who's on I think our ranking member.
On intelligence. Yeah.
He has really been quietly powerful in his television appearances. I saw him yesterday when I watched. By the way, I'm watching news again, which is weird for me. But I guess it was Maddow show that he came on. And his discussion of what this all means was really, really powerful. I think that if more people could see it, they'd really get the gravity of the situation. Because we laugh and we joke about it a little bit, but I know both of you are, and I am too. We're just getting eaten up by what's happened to our country.
Yeah,
it's just incredible. I mean,
yeah.
If all the people in the world to pick to be president, this is the absolute. You pick any guy on the street before the guy that's the president now.
Yes, you do. And once again, thank you, James Comey.
Yes. How could Comey have done what he did, knowing all these things? It's just.
I know. It's mind-boggling that Comey was okay with putting this. What have they got on Comey?
Nothing. You know what the thing? I don't think they actually have any. Maybe I'm wrong, and it'll all blow up, and it'll show that Comey's actually a character from the Americans. But I don't think so. I think he was that arrogant that he thought everybody was waiting to hear what James Comey had to say about all this. He'll clear the air. Okay, it's not criminal, but it was bad. And once they hear from me, James Comey, everyone will properly process it, and that'll be that.
So, just Clinton derangement syndrome?
Yes, mostly. Remember, he has a long history of it.
Yeah, he does. He does. He's hated them for a long time.
It's an odd
But
thing.
Russia.
Still, yes, most people have hated Russia for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, sure, Bill Clinton, but Putin.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny because in 2008, Putin's Russia had a military incursion into a part of Georgia called South Ossetia, which is Russian majority, sort of like the Crimea of Georgia.
Yeah.
And obviously it was a bad thing to do. But the idea that the United States should take strong military action because of it was something I opposed, not because I thought the way Putin did it was right. I just didn't see it as something that the United States should take a military step against. You're talking about a military step against Russia.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And McCain and Graham and all, the same guys who are now very upset about everything else about Russia were very upset at the time. Bush didn't do anything, and rightly so. He said the right things, probably imposed a sanction or two. I forget exactly what happened on that story. But then, Obama came in and we'd sort of forgotten about South Ossetia. And reset buttons and all the things that we always try to do with Russia, which you should try to do. But then, of course, Crimea happened, which, again, Crimea really is, what is it? It's 90% Russian. Joan, you're the Russian studies expert, so I would defer to you on that. But the problem with Russia now, to me, is its incursion in our election. I mean, that was, and now, of course, in the French election for Marine Le Pen and trying to undermine Merkel in the German situation. So that kind of aggressiveness outside their sphere of influence in ways that, frankly, we thought didn't happen quite so overtly anyway, it just makes it completely different. When you select our president, and don't kid yourself, the Russians, as much as Comey, determined who our president is today. That's just not something we can play with.
No. No, it is fun to laugh about all of this, but this is really scary, scary stuff.
Yeah, and to pick Trump of all people. Well, of course, that's why they picked him. They wouldn't have picked Jeb Bush.
He's a tremendous puppet.
Or Lil Mark they wouldn't have done this. Certainly not Casey.
No,
it was Trump.
We had to nominate him first. I mean, that's a good question. Is how early was there Russian interference? Because I mean, at the outset, everybody, right up until his nomination, everybody thought it was ridiculous. So we were still talking about people covering the convention, saying, "Well, how can they engineer a coup at the convention so as not to nominate him?"
Yeah,
right at the opening of the convention, people were still setting conventional wisdom such that, don't be surprised if it doesn't come out the way you expect at convention. Of course it's going to come out there. You can't undo it at that point. Not
but
really.
as for how long they've been plotting this,
that's a good
I think
question.
a while. I mean, and here again, it goes back to his taxes. Why we haven't seen his
true.
taxes.
I guess that might have disqualified him much earlier.
I still think that there's probably not much there'll be some Russia stuff, like who he owes money to and whatnot, but it won't be much different than what we basically surmise. I really think his biggest problem for him personally in his tax returns is it's going to show he's really not that rich.
And he hasn't paid taxes, but I would very much like to see how much he owes Russia businesses.
Well, I think the thing with
and
Russia,
how many of those Russian entities he owes are state-owned.
I think that, in fact, David did some good work on this during the election that shows that basically Russian money is what saved him from complete ruin.
Yeah.
He had no sources of credit.
Right. No Western bank would loan to him.
Exactly, except for Deutsche Bank, which also got burned and sued them. But that's a different story. But basically, and it's not always just loans, it's partners. Remember, the Soho Hotel, the Trump Soho, is basically a Russian hotel.
Yeah.
Where Trump has licensed his name.
The Trump Tower in Toronto is a Russian project.
And that saved them, and the other guy who saved them, of course, was Zucker and Mark Burnett with the Celebrity Apprentice, which probably was one of the main sources of cash flow for him in that time frame.
For personal stuff, yeah. I mean, it may be that his personal taxes don't show a great deal other than, one, he's not really as rich as he says he is. Two, yes, some about debt, but what we need is a broader picture of his financial situation, which might not be in the taxes, or at least might not be as clearly represented in the taxes. That, okay, here's income, I report it, it comes from this source. The real question is, what is that source? And that won't be in the taxes. That'll be in the incorporation filings here and elsewhere. And I mean, if you could get a full picture of it, a forensic audit of where his money comes from, I would guess that the bulk of it, what doesn't come from Mark Burnett and The Apprentice, which would be relatively speaking, I don't think there's anything untoward about that money, except that they pay him way too much. But what can you do? But the rest of it, the fact that he's getting partnership deals. On his taxes, it looks up and up. A partnership has paid him this amount of money. He declares that ordinarily he might owe this much tax on it, but given the write-offs that he's still taking from the casinos, he says he's no longer liable. He's not liable this year for that money anyway. But the real question is, that money that you were paid by the partnership, is that not just Russian mob money laundered through these stupid projects that are, a bunch of Russians who need to launder money get together and decide to build a building somewhere and offer him...
And Trump's a very useful tool for...
Right. Exactly. Offer him $1 million a year or whatever to call it the Trump Tower. He has nothing to do with it. You pay him a management fee to give him a stream of income on top of the licensing fee. He's happy. And they don't care that they are losing money on it. It's the only interest they have is laundering dirty rubles into clean dollars. And if they, for every $10 million worth of dirty rubles they put in, they are only able to draw out $5 million clean in American cash. They're still happy. And that all goes not only to his mob connections, but also to his business acumen, Mr. Genius Businessman. The only reason he's still in business and getting money from investors at all is that they don't care to make a profit. They're in it to launder dollars, and so everything is a losing proposition, but he still gets money from it. If we actually look at, is this a successful business? No, it's not. It's intentionally a losing business. It's great as money laundering, but it's terrible for profit. We don't know that because you're just getting a management fee. It looks like you're profiting because you're sitting on your butt in New York getting money from Toronto, but you're only getting money from Toronto because no sane business venture would pay you to manage this building. It's just that they need your name so they can launder their losses through there. So anyway.
No,
it's moot anyway because the House Ways and Means Committee on a party line shot down getting his.
Yes, right. Brilliant idea, though. Good find for Bill Pascrell and his staff to dig this law up.
Don't throw that one away. 2019.
Yeah.
President Pelosi might order it anyway.
Yes. So it's entirely possible. If there's a Democratic majority in the House, they can do that. And once again, thanks inadvertently to Ernie Istook for bringing that provision to our attention accidentally when he tried to slip in after hours into one of the appropriations bills, expanded powers under that law for Ways and Means majority staff to requisition tax returns themselves. Otherwise, everyone forgets the 1924 law and never finds it again. But luckily, there are some staffers for Pascal who were around when Istuk was around, and they remember. Good job.
Good job.
Thanks, Ernie.
Hey, related on that story, though, there's two things about Palm Beach that I think are interesting about the Russian connection. You know the story of the house, not the Mar-a-Lago, but a different house that Trump supposedly overpaid for, and then some Russian bought it during the crash in 08-09 for like double the price that Trump paid, even though it should have been half the price.
Right, and the whole house had mold. He tore it down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's, money laundering is absolutely something that should have been looked at and maybe will be. The other thing that's fascinating, because Trump's going down there for the third straight weekend. Mar-a-Lago, the Winter White House. The Winter White, and I'm still find it bizarre, and I don't know what the Secret Service does. It's a resort. People are staying there.
Yeah. It is a weird thing. I mean, it's not his house. Also,
he's got quarters there, but it's not his house. It's a resort. It's a country club, whatever the heck he calls it.
People come and go. They can't do security clearances on all of them.
We don't even know
hang out
who's
in the dining
member.
room with him and take pictures of him discussing critical national security matters.
Exactly that. Like this weekend when they were telling this story, I was like, if you have dinner reservations, even if you're a member of the club, if you need to go to the White House, if the president invites you to the White House or somebody working for the president says, come talk to us, you gotta, they call you a couple days ahead of time. You gotta give me your social security number, date of birth, sometimes whatever, mother's maiden name, who knows? I can't even remember what you have to give them, but you got to be cleared when they invite you. I mean, does this mean if you make dinner reservations, do they say, what time, 8 o'clock, 2, name, right? Social security number, date of birth, mother's maiden name?
Here is actually something Jason Chaffetz wants to look into.
What,
he does say that he wants to review these security processes. He sent a letter yesterday, sternly worded letter saying, okay, tell me all this stuff.
Well, that's something.
It's something. It's not the story of the day, but he wants to look like he's doing something to earn his keep. So,
yeah, you remember when he couldn't look his daughter in the eye?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so, but here's a breakthrough. Chris Cillizza, worst journalist in Washington, tweets out a story he wrote. These Russia allegations have shaken the core of the Trump presidency. Whatever that means. Exactly. That's exactly the reaction.
It had a core?
Yeah, exactly. What do you mean? It exposes the core of the Trump presidency, doesn't it?
Yeah. I don't know what... okay. Welcome to the party, I guess. It's nice to see him, mad about a Republican administration for once, but
I mean, he's just, me. I have my jihad against him. So
yes.
I'm sure he's just thinking about the infighting between staff because that's the kind of thing that he cares about.
The optics.
The optics. Although I have to admit that it is sort of interesting to see Kellyanne Conway completely undercut at every turn by the next thing that comes out of Sean Spicer's mouth.
Yeah, that's fun. I don't know if she cares, but it's fun.
Mika said she's banned Kellyanne from Morning Joe.
Oh, my.
That's what I heard.
We'll see next week when she's on if the ban really...
Yeah.
It was only a one-day ban. But we'll see. I mean, look, I will say this, both for the New York Times, even Morning Joe, frankly, all the media, I thought they'd have reacted appropriately to these revelations. We'll see if they keep it up.
You would think the New York Times could have acted appropriately to these revelations back in August when Harry Reid brought them up.
No, even worse.
Again in October.
Well, the New York Times said that ran a story fed by the New York FBI office saying that there was no links between the Trump campaign and Russia.
Yes, it did.
Yesterday, the New York Times broke the story.
Yes, it did.
Same reporter, by the way.
Uh-huh.
And he said, contacts during the campaign. And they have no explanation for their first story. Never have corrected it, explained it, or even mentioned it.
Nope.
That was the weekend before the election.
Yep.
Oh man, New York Times.
The New York Times was bad during the election. There's just
The New
no
York Times
other
was
way
awful
about
during
talking
the
about it.
election,
They
and the New
often
York
are.
Times might be doing a better job now, but we can't forget how
No.
bad the New York Times was
I
before
still
the
haven't
election.
forgotten how
And
bad
I'm
they
not,
were in the 2004
and I'm not sure
election.
it's not because Marty Barron has turned the Washington Post into a terrific newspaper that the New York Times has found it necessary to abandon its more endowed approach to the news.
It might be. I mean, the Washington Post has really rocked it. So
Yes. I think Charles Pierce had a good tweet yesterday, said there's an honest-to-goodness newspaper war over this Russia story, meaning a war being they're both fighting like hell to get the story
yeah.
and to be first, which is, hey, that's how it was supposed to work. But the New York Times sort of bagged out on that. They preferred Clinton cash stories fed to them by Breitbart.
Yep.
Wow. Well, it's good to see them back on that beat. I'm sure that there's some feeling that they're back in their glory days of Watergate and are running around saying, "This is the way. This is what we have needed."
Or their glory days of wireless surveillance.
Oh no, the New York Times, yeah, the Times has repeated
Warrant
itself.
surveillance, I'm sorry.
Oh, what do we?
I'm still back in 2005. Yeah.
Yes, that was the story they held till after the election
Yes.
because they didn't want to impact the election.
Right.
Uh-huh.
They said that.
Yeah,
They said-
Oh, absolutely. I remember that's what I was saying. I not only were they terrible during this election, I haven't forgiven them for 2004 yet.
Nope.
Or 2000 if you want. I'll drop a name on you. You guys probably don't even remember. Cheryl Gay Stolberg.
Yep.
Oh my
No.
God. She was she followed the Gore campaign in 2000.
Oh, all right. So,
Yes,
she would have
she
been covering
famously
sighs and
had
eye
the-
rolls.
Ugh,
Okay,
yeah.
probably the right person. Just one more thing I wanted to bring up, not to interrupt the complaint about the media, but again, and since we haven't succeeded in getting Armando back to work at this stage, might as well throw this one out there. That kind of brings us back to a subject we can all chime in a little bit about. Joan, you mentioned that pretty much the only serious accomplishment that's come out of, or serious damage anyway, that's been done by the Trump administration to date, the executive order to the IRS with regard to, it wasn't directly to the IRS, but the executive order on Obamacare repeal.
Yeah.
That came back up yesterday. I know everybody's been circulating this Reason magazine piece, and the Politico reporter Dan Diamond, who was on the beat of that release of that executive order that night. And Armando, you'll remember he's asking questions at the time about what the damn thing meant, since they didn't put the text out right away. And then it came out, and we said, first blush, they haven't really done anything with this executive order.
Yes.
Diamond was out again last night, but his tweet last night was, everyone who said Trump's executive order on Obamacare was purely symbolic, this is perfect evidence why it wasn't, and pointing to the way the IRS has taken this executive order to mean that, we can stop enforcing the individual mandate through the tax system. And that is no doubt could be a real blow to Obamacare, although I guess Dan Diamond was invested in that story. Nobody, of course, said it was purely symbolic. We only said it doesn't give anybody any power they didn't already have. The IRS could have done this at any time. They just would have been opposed by President Obama and won't be opposed by President Trump. Still,
as an executive order, it didn't change anything. The IRS could have done precisely what it did. Relatedly, there's a story that maybe you mentioned before, Joan. I think you've been following it. The arrest of a dreamer. I believe it's in Seattle.
It's in Seattle. Yeah, I haven't read up on it, but I did see it happen last night in the midst of all of this.
He has a work permit and a deferral of enforcement.
Yeah. He's a DACA recipient.
Right. And as of today, talk about the importance of executive orders. Trump has not rescinded the DACA executive order, the Dreamer executive order of 2014. So it's plainly illegal. There's a lawsuit filed. To me, it's pretty clear they're going to win. The president has issued an executive order telling them not to do what they did. I think there's some type of argument they're making that he was a gang member or something like that. But, you'd have to prove that, it seems to me. But the executive order is still in place. One that actually did something. It didn't change anybody's power. It actually ordered ICE not to do what they did. And ICE said, I don't care. I'm going to do it anyway. But, that executive order is actually enforceable against ICE. The president is the boss of ICE.
Well, we'll see what they do with that one. It may be another one of those cases they want to lose and say, my hands are tied by these stupid courts, which are illegitimate.
Yeah, the immigration stuff we'll have to talk about next week when we have time. But it's fascinating to me to see what's going on in the White House over immigration with Jeff Sessions and Stephen Miller deeply ensconced, and yet they can't get the onerous immigration stuff beyond the Muslim ban that they want. Maybe because of the Muslim ban.
Yes. Well, that'll poison a lot of what they try to do now, and courts have been primed, and they no longer will be the first one out of the box to defy the new president. So maybe the floodgates are open there.
Perhaps.
That would be nice. Well, I didn't know we were going to run our segment this way, but Joan, thanks for joining us for Armando's segment.
You're welcome.
Joan, thanks for letting me stay on your segment. I appreciate it.
Oh, it was fun. It was fun.
I like
what else were we going to talk about? I mean, Congress really isn't that much.
I just gave you guys credit for the great impeachment in-game idea, though.
Okay.
Win the Congress in 2018, impeach Trump Prince. Hello, President Pelosi.
Yes, well,
really warming up to that idea.
Remember to credit one of our commenters. I'll scroll back. I'll find it and include it in the roundup. But we were reminded in the middle of the conversation that don't forget that if you're really thinking impeachment, you're probably talking Democratic Congress, and that means Speaker Pelosi. Steve Brown, who tweets as His Honor. I'll tweet that out for all of you, and you can take a look. Thanks to both of you for giving me a nice rest during the second half of the show. I enjoyed it.
Thanks a lot.
We might part ways.
Bye, guys.
Thanks very much, Joan and Armando. You as well. This was an enjoyable discussion. I think these round tables work out nice. It makes for good radio. So thanks, everybody. Thanks, everybody, for bearing with us through our discussion as well. I hope we enlightened you, brought some new stories to mind. We should take a look at that. Don't sleep on that IRS change either. That could very definitely undermine a lot of what underpins the entire concept of Obamacare. If the IRS no longer cares whether you're reporting that you are covered or paying the penalty, that's going to undo an awful lot of the building blocks of Obamacare all by itself. But we'll see. I mean, I guess if people just continue to buy insurance and or pay the damn thing, I guess it won't make that much difference after all. We'll have to see what the numbers are. Anyway, there's lots of other news, of course, that we didn't get to. That's always the way it is here on the show, and that's the purpose of the after show. Well, that and also to keep Wink and Justice sane, giving them their turn to vent on all these stories. So what do we got for today? I will tell you, because Justice has told me. Trump promoted a dangerous anti-vaxxer myth. You heard a little bit about that one. Russia says they'll never give back our territories, as the Secretary of State Tillerson is set to meet with their foreign minister in Germany at the G20 tomorrow.
From Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
That'll be a hell of a G20, and deja vu, Justice says, is just a shorter way of saying Russia denies interfering in the French presidential elections utilizing cyber attacks, propaganda, trolls, and fake news. And of course, in the last half, another visit with Angela Marks, a.k.a. Angie in Washington State. Stay tuned for that next.